Imagine spending your entire life building this massive legacy.
Hmm.
You use all your time, your energy, your resources to construct something you think is just magnificent, right?
Right.
Only to watch it literally incinerate in seconds
Yeah.
because you built it with the wrong materials. So welcome to our deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, and before we take a single step into uncovering this, like, 2,000-year-old blueprint for building a life that is actually fireproof, I want to offer a very sincere divine blessing for your day today and for your entire week ahead.
Absolutely.
May you find profound clarity, peace, and purpose in whatever challenges you are currently facing. We are incredibly grateful you've chosen to spend this time with us.
It really is a genuine privilege to be here and to explore this with you all.
We have a very specific mission today. We are exploring a truly mind-bending slice of ancient text, which is the third chapter of a letter known as First Corinthians.
Yeah, a fascinating text.
It really is. And to decode it, we are pulling insights from the study notes of both the Holman and the NAA study Bibles. Our goal is to extract how this text tackles some shockingly modern problems. I mean, we're talking intense information overload, massive human egos, and the kind of bitter tribal division that just completely fractures communities.
Which, sounds incredibly familiar today.
Right.
Yep.
But to understand the weight of this letter, we really need a clear picture of the audience receiving it, because we aren't talking about a quiet, rustic village here, are we?
Oh, not at all. No, if you want to understand the Corinthians, you need to picture, like, the most chaotic, hyper-connected metropolis you can possibly imagine.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, ancient Corinth in the first century was this massive commercial hub. It was situated right on a highly strategic trade route with two major seaports.
So it was rich.
Incredibly wealthy, highly cosmopolitan, and intensely diverse. People from all over the Roman Empire were just pouring into this city. It was an absolute melting pot of competing philosophies, religions, and worldviews.
Which honestly sounds a lot like the psychological experience of logging onto social media today.
Exactly.
You just get completely bombarded with competing ideologies and, influencers and debates, all of them demanding your immediate attention and allegiance.
That is an incredibly accurate comparison, actually. The Corinthians were experiencing a sort of ancient version of severe information overload.
I can only imagine.
Right, and right in the middle of this fast-paced, high-status city, there is this newly formed community of early Christians. The author of our text, Paul, actually spent over a year there helping to, establish this group.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be united by this revolutionary, countercultural message of grace. But Paul is now receiving letters from afar, and, well, the reports are disastrous.
Oh, no,
The
no, no.
community is literally tearing itself apart. They are acting far less like a supportive, unified family and much more like a highly polarized, deeply toxic internet comment section.
Okay, let's unpack this, because Paul's response to their toxicity is what really caught my attention. He doesn't send this polite diplomatic memo urging them to find common ground.
No, he really doesn't.
He writes to them and bluntly diagnoses them as carnal, the word is fleshly or worldly, and literally calls them babies in Christ.
Yeah, it's pretty harsh.
He says, I wanted to feed you solid food, the meat of advanced teaching, but I couldn't. I had to feed you milk.
The imagery is blunt for a reason, though, and the study notes help clarify that Paul isn't acting as some, like, elitist gatekeeper here. He's acting like a responsible parent.
Which makes perfect sense when you think about the biological mechanism of digestion.
Right.
It's like a high school student demanding to take quantum physics when they just flat out refuse to learn basic algebra.
Mm-hmm.
Or, returning to the food analogy, it's not that a parent is maliciously hiding a ribeye steak from a newborn out of spite.
Exactly, yeah.
It's that an infant's digestive system completely lacks the necessary enzymes to break down complex proteins.
Mm.
If you force-feed steak to a baby, it doesn't nourish them. It literally becomes toxic to their system and causes immense damage.
That's a great way to put it. Milk is essentially pre-digested nutrients.
Right.
So Paul is saying that handing advanced, complex spiritual authority to a community that still has, well, an infant's level of ego control, that would destroy them.
Precisely. The evidence of their immaturity, the reason they're stuck on a liquid diet, has absolutely nothing to do with their intellect, does it?
Not at all. The Holman study notes point out that Corinth was overflowing with highly educated, philosophically trained individuals. They had the intellectual horsepower.
Yeah.
Their baby status is proven entirely by their behavior.
Right.
The text specifically highlights their constant envy, their strife, and the bitter factions they are forming around favorite public figures.
Like fan clubs almost.
Exactly. One faction is screaming, "I follow Paul," while another rival group is yelling, "Well, I follow Apollos." Apollos being another, highly eloquent teacher who visited them.
I read that and immediately thought about the psychology of modern celebrity worship, or like toxic fandoms.
Oh, definitely.
It is the exact same tribalism we see today. You watch people online viciously attack each other, completely losing their grip on basic decency just because they're obsessively fanboying over rival tech billionaires or politicians or pop stars.
Yeah, it's exhausting to watch.
It's this desperate need to align with a perceived winner.
And Paul uses a very cutting Greek word to describe this condition, sarkinos.
Sarkinos.
Yeah, which translates to being characterized by the flesh, meaning they are operating entirely on base, unredeemed human instincts, completely devoid of spiritual maturity.
Wow.
But the linguistic notes highlight an even more devastating critique. Paul asks them if they aren't walking according to men, which was actually a well-known idiom in their culture.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a derogatory phrase strongly associated with the mindset of slavery.
Wait, so by voluntarily obsessing over these leaders, they were adopting a slave mentality?
Exactly. They were taking a message meant to liberate them and using it to turn themselves into the psychological property of human teachers.
That is so tragic.
It is. But here's the deeper mechanism at play, the real root of the issue. They weren't actually worshiping Paul or Apollos.
What were they doing then?
They were using these leaders as avatars for their own arrogance.
Ah, I see. It's a form of proxy arrogance.
Precisely.
By loudly attaching themselves to a superior or highly eloquent leader, they're essentially borrowing that leader's status to elevate themselves above their peers.
Yeah, they are worshiping their own exceptional taste in choosing the right leader.
That is exactly the psychological trap they fell into.
Yeah.
Elevating their chosen teacher was just a socially acceptable way of looking down on the other groups.
Which is incredibly relevant today.
So, if the text is actively condemning this kind of celebrity worship and telling us that treating leaders like infallible masters is toxic, it begs the question of how we should view people in leadership positions.
Right.
And Paul seems to anticipate that question because he immediately transitions into this brilliant agricultural metaphor to redefine leadership entirely.
He does. He takes them out of the philosophical debate hall and drops them directly into the dirt of a farmer's field.
I love that shift.
It's so grounding. Paul states his role and Apollos' role with radical simplicity. He says, "I planted the seed, Apollos waddled it, but God gave the growth."
Okay, I have to be completely honest here. When I was reviewing the study notes on this section, as someone who pours my blood, sweat, and tears into my own projects, reading that God gets 100% of the credit actually stung a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, doesn't this feel a bit demoralizing for the leaders? They do the exhausting work in the dirt, but God gets all the credit. Am I misreading his tone, or is Paul basically saying human effort is worthless?
What's fascinating here is that in the historical context of agrarian societies, this statement wasn't demoralizing in the slightest.
Really?
Not at all. It was actually the ultimate relief of pressure. The study notes focus on the Greek word Paul uses for himself and Apollos, which is diakonoi.
Digelgoi.
Yeah, it translates to servants, or basically basic farmhands.
So he is actively lowering his own job title.
He is radically devoting himself. Think about the mechanics of a massive modern commercial farm today.
Okay.
You have hired workers whose specific job is to go out at like 4 in the morning and calibrate the complex irrigation systems, right?
Yeah, it's hard work.
If they don't do their job, the crops die. Their labor is absolutely essential. But those workers don't stand in the field, stare at a sprouting stalk of corn, and declare, "Look at the miracle I engineered. I am the master of biology."
Because they know all they did was turn on the water. They didn't synthesize the sunlight, they didn't create the nitrogen cycle in the soil, and they didn't magically command the DNA of the seed to germinate. They merely provided the optimal conditions for growth.
Exactly. The growth itself is a staggering autonomous mystery that belongs entirely to the Creator.
That's a beautiful way to look at it.
And we are actually consulting the NAA Study Bible today, which is a Portuguese translation, and we are using it because its linguistic notes capture a nuance in this specific passage that English translations often flatten.
Oh, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, it uses the terms cooperadores and lavora.
How do those terms clarify the Greek text?
Well, cooperadores means co-workers who are laboring side by side toward a shared goal, rather than competing CEOs trying to steal market share from one another.
That completely changes the vibe.
It does. And the community itself. They are the lavora, the cultivated field.
Okay.
The field does not belong to the farmhands. It belongs entirely to the owner of the estate.
That reframes the entire power dynamic. When you internalize that you are just a cooperator, a farmhand turning on the irrigation in a field you don't even own, it completely starves the ego.
It really does.
You can't build a cult of personality if you genuinely believe you didn't create the growth. But Paul doesn't let them stay in the farm field for long, does he?
No, he keeps it moving.
Yeah. Just as we get comfortable with the agricultural metaphor, the text pivots entirely to the realm of architecture and construction.
It's a deliberate shift from the hidden, organic, mysterious work of God in the soil to the highly visible, highly structured, and deliberate responsibility of the human workers.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the tone gets much more intense. Paul describes himself as the wise master builder, or as the Portuguese notes highlight, the sabio arquiteto.
Yes, the wise architect.
He says that as the architect, he laid the ultimate, unshakable foundation for this community, which is Jesus Christ. He did his job properly. But then he looks at the subsequent leaders, the people building on top of his foundation, and issues a severe warning about their choice of materials.
Because while the foundation is objectively perfect and secure, the superstructure is entirely up to the discretion of the current builders.
To put this into a modern construction context, when you build a house today, once that concrete foundation cures, the contractors have a lot of choices, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They can frame the house using high-grade reinforced steel, premium insulation, solid oak. Or if they want to maximize their profit margins and save time, they can cut corners.
They usually do.
Yeah, they can use cheap, flimsy drywall, subpar wiring, and shoddy 2x4s. And the terrifying part is that from the outside, with a fresh coat of paint and some nice landscaping, both houses look absolutely identical on opening day.
That is so true.
You can't see the cheap materials until the house undergoes a stress test.
And that is the exact mechanism Paul is highlighting. He says builders can build on the spiritual foundation using gold, silver, and precious stones. The Holman notes remind us these materials evoke the glorious, enduring construction of King Solomon's ancient temple.
Okay, beautiful stuff.
Or they can choose to build using wood, hay, and straw materials that are cheap, fast to assemble, but ultimately temporary and fragile.
So what constitutes building with wood and straw in a community?
Building with ego, superficial hype, worldly philosophies, and divisive rhetoric.
The easy stuff.
Exactly. It might draw a massive crowd quickly, but it has absolutely no structural integrity. And this choice of materials has permanent implications because of the stress test you mentioned.
Right.
The historical context provided by the study Bibles regarding ancient construction contracts is really vital here.
How did those contracts work in the first century? I mean, was there a building inspector?
Basically, yeah. In the ancient world, when a significant public building was commissioned, the legal contracts contained strict stipulations for a final, rigorous inspection by the owner.
Wow.
They had to ensure the builders hadn't fraudulently used cheaper materials than they billed for. Paul adopts this exact legal language.
That's brilliant.
He declares that an ultimate day of inspection is coming. He simply calls it the day, and it will test everyone's building materials with fire.
A literal fiery audit of their life's work.
Yes, and the Greek word the study Bibles focus on here is missos, which translates to a worker's reward or wage.
Okay.
Just like an ancient contractor waiting for their final payout after passing inspection, spiritual leaders will be compensated based on how their work survives the fire.
So if you built your segment of the community with gold, silver, and precious stones, meaning you taught solid truth, fostered deep unity, and built people up with quiet integrity, the fire simply purifies it, right?
Exactly. The metal shines brighter. You receive your missos.
But if you use the cheap stuff, well, if you built your influence by tearing other people down and promoting yourself, the fire of inspection instantly incinerates it. Decades of work, all that time, all that energy, just vaporized into ash in a matter of seconds. It's an incredibly sobering image.
It really is.
But the text makes a very careful theological distinction about the builder themselves, doesn't it?
It does, and it's a crucial distinction. The text states that the builder who used the highly flammable materials will suffer profound loss, the complete loss of their reward and their legacy, but they themselves will be saved, as through fire.
Like someone sprinting out of a burning house in the middle of the night.
Yes.
They survive, they are breathing, their salvation is completely secure because their life was built on the foundation of Christ. But they smell like smoke, and they have absolutely nothing to show for their time on earth.
Exactly. Their contribution to the community is completely lost, which brings an immense weight of responsibility to how we participate in the groups we belong to.
Because we aren't just building a generic local community center. The stakes are astronomically higher than that. Paul eventually reveals what this building actually is.
He reveals that this structure they're haphazardly building is nothing less than the sanctuary or the temple of God.
Wow.
He tells the Corinthians that they, corporately, together as a unified community, are the literal dwelling place of God's Spirit.
Which fundamentally changes the severity of their infighting.
Oh, completely.
Because the text issues what has to be one of the most chilling warnings in the entire New Testament. Paul writes that if anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy them.
It is a severe warning. And to understand the mechanics of why the consequence is so severe, we have to look at the original Greek word translated as destroy.
Okay.
Just like the language of the final inspection, this word was heavily utilized in ancient building contracts.
So it wasn't just a general term for breaking something.
No, it was a highly specific legal term used to describe intentional fraudulent negligence.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't about accidentally knocking over a vase. Think about a corrupt ancient contractor who purposefully uses defective, watered-down mortar on a massive load-bearing column just so they can pocket the surplus budget.
Right. Fully knowing that the roof might eventually collapse and crush the people inside.
Exactly. That is the exact kind of destruction Paul is talking about.
So in this context, bringing division, envy, and factionalism into a spiritual community isn't just an annoying personality flaw or a minor administrative headache.
No.
It is intentional structural sabotage of something holy. It is defacing a sanctuary.
It is spiritual vandalism. And when you look at the root cause of that vandalism, which we established earlier was their immense arrogance and their reliance on their own perceived brilliance, it brings us to the climax of the chapter.
Where Paul just takes a sledgehammer to their intellectual pride.
He really does. This raises an important question, though. How do we actually define wisdom?
Right.
Because the Corinthians clearly thought they were the smartest people in the room. They were constantly debating, philosophizing, and carefully selecting the most articulate leaders to align themselves with.
They view themselves as the intellectual elite.
They did. But the text states unequivocally that the wisdom of this world is absolute foolishness to God. Paul quotes ancient scripture, noting that God catches the wise in their own craftiness.
Meaning all their sophisticated political maneuvering, all their intellectual posturing to gain social status is viewed by the creator of the universe the same way a grandmaster views a toddler trying to play chess.
That's a great analogy.
It's completely absurd.
It's an illusion of control.
So what does this all mean? How does Paul synthesize these intense metaphors? The digesting of milk versus meat, the farmhands watering the soil, the contractors facing a fiery audit, and the sabotage of a sacred temple. Where does he land the plane?
He lands it with a grand, mind-bending paradox. Because worldly wisdom is ultimately empty and human effort alone cannot produce real spiritual growth, he concludes that absolutely no one should boast in human leaders. The text says, "Therefore let no one boast in men."
And the rationale he provides is just stunning.
Isn't it?
He looks at these fractured, stressed-out Corinthians who have been screaming themselves hoarse saying, I belong to Paul, or I belong to Apollos, as they desperately try to carve out tiny little slivers of influence for themselves.
Yeah.
And he basically asks them, why are you fighting over these tiny scraps? Why are you enslaving yourselves to these farmhands when all things belong to you?
It is a breathtaking reversal of their entire worldview.
It really is.
Yeah.
The text meticulously lists it out. Paul, Apollos, Cephas, the world, life, death, the present, the future, all are yours.
All of it.
You do not belong to the leaders. The leaders are simply gifts given to serve your growth. But the hierarchy doesn't stop there.
No, it goes even higher.
All things belong to you because you belong to Christ and Christ belongs to God.
It is the ultimate antidote to the anxiety of tribalism. When you deeply internalize your profound security in that cosmic hierarchy, that you are ultimately held by Christ who is held by God, you simply don't need to fight over who the smartest philosopher is, or which political faction is superior, or who the best speaker is.
Yeah, that exhausting anxiety of constantly needing to prove you are in the right group just evaporates.
Exactly. Because you already possess everything of actual value.
You don't have to build your identity with cheap wood and straw by tearing other people down to make yourself look taller. You can afford to build with gold and silver by resting quietly on the foundation that was already laid for you.
Precisely. It is a radical call to profound humility, which, paradoxically, unlocks the ultimate psychological and spiritual freedom.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought. I want you, the listener, to mull over as you go about the rest of your week.
Okay.
Based on the mechanisms we've unpacked today from this ancient yet shockingly relevant blueprint, if a master building inspector were to conduct an audit of your life, your daily work, or the way you interact within your own community right now, what materials would they find?
That's the real question.
Would they find fireproof gold and silver, built on a foundation of genuine unity, humility, and quiet service? Or would they find highly flammable wood and straw, built on a fragile foundation of ego, status-seeking, and petty tribalism? It is a heavy question, but it's one entirely worth sitting with today.
It certainly is, because the materials we choose to build with today absolutely determine what survives the fire tomorrow.
Wonderfully said. And that brings our exploration of 1 Corinthians chapter 3 to a close. Thank you so much for joining us, for engaging your curiosity, and for exploring these enduring ancient truths alongside us. As we officially say goodbye, we want to remind you that God blesses all of you, the listeners. Take care of yourselves, build your lives wisely, and we will see you on the next deep dive.